正当美国后任总统川普忙于内阁名单时，他昔日的对手中国国家主席已经在亚太经济合作会议的舞台上越过现任美国总统的肩头向他招手，做出中国是朋友的呼吁，并释放出会与川普合作以改善世界最大经济体之间的关系这样友善的讯息。
Donald Trump is the winner in what could be the most consequential US presidential election in recent history. His victory comes in the context of multiple ongoing conflicts around the world and persistent instability in major global economies.
There are already trade frictions between China and the United States. So whatever Trump does would be a continuation of existing policy. And by that primarily is his threat to impose 60% tariffs on Chinese goods entering the US market. Now, if that's what he does, the potential there is for a trade war, and then the potential for a trade war that engulfs the global economy. Many countries around the world, if this happens, are going to have to make choices.
Donald Trump sparked a trade war with China during his last presidency when he slapped a series of tariffs on Chinese imports, and the Chinese government retaliated against U.S. exporters.
Few people realize that many of the things that we import from China, in fact, the majority, are inputs that our manufacturers use. Driving up those costs is really going to hurt American manufacturers. If we look back at what Biden's policies were for Trump, in many cases, they were continuations or even extensions of Trump's policies. So he added taxes on new energy. He has placed a large number of companies under financial or economic sanctions. And he has, of course, had the export controls on advanced semiconductors, which have really, impinged on China's quest for upgrading its technology. So the answer may be there really is nothing that the Chinese want. Right now, their economy is, as you said, in a rough patch, to put it nicely. And they may decide that putting tariffs of their own is just, going to shoot themselves in the foot.
The Chinese are not just going to sit there if the United States imposes these huge tariffs and keeps them on there. If they can negotiate, put them on there as a tactic, as a tool, and negotiate some arrangement, that's one thing for a short period of time. If they're on there for a long period of time, the Chinese are going to retaliate.
The relationship between the world's two largest economies is complicated and fraught with difficulties.
Joe Biden and Xi Jinping do agree on one thing, and that is that the world is entering a period of uncertainty and change. Xi calls it of turbulence, and with the next U.S. president vowing to impose high tariffs on many countries, but especially on China, Xi is positioning himself as a global leader of interdependence and unity, as opposed to unilateralism and protectionism.
China says it's ready to work for a smooth transition in bilateral ties.
美中关系恶化已经持续好几年，不论是现在的主政者、过去的主政者，还是即将离开的主政者，对于这几年来的锻炼或是脱钩，应当都有深切的感受。所以，川普的胜利不见得是全球经贸危机的序曲响起，它或许是给美中困境带来解决的希望。
Last year, the US exported $148 billion worth of goods to China, while importing more than $500 billion. Now Trump is pledging to scrap China's favored trading status and impose 60% or more tariffs on all Chinese goods. Trump's claims high tariffs would protect the domestic economy and generate huge tax revenue for his government.
And the third most beautiful word is the word tariff. It really did. Tariffs needed a press agent because all these crooked politicians, they didn't like it. They're all taken care of by foreign countries. They don't like tariffs. But we're doing the tariffs. And
China's president tonight is congratulating President-elect Trump, saying that Washington and Beijing got to find a way to get along. The relationship between these two countries has been at its lowest point in decades over fights over trade, technology, Taiwan.
Well, like much of the world, Hallie, China is trying to figure out what Trump 2.0 means for relations with the U.S. And in a word, what it means for China is tariffs. President-elect Trump is intent on expanding the trade friction with China that he launched in his first term as president, with 60% tariffs on all Chinese imports, like pretty much everything. Before, the tariffs were in the 7 to 25% range, and China's economy is now in a much more vulnerable position. And there's also concern here that this could lead to the decoupling of the two economies, which would have a devastating impact in both countries.
And President Xi said that our two countries should not fight a new Cold War, as he called it, and he reiterated China's 4 red lines. How does that inform, in your opinion, the relationship between Xi and Trump as they get ready to work together again?
Well, it was a good opportunity for President Xi to say to President Trump and to the world that President Xi, basically wants to maintain current China policy toward the United States. I'm in China right now, and I can tell you that I've heard that repeated many, many times here. The Chinese do want to work with the United States, and I must say that the tone of the officials I talked with in the last couple of days is, as I said, sober, but it's also realistic. The adults in the room. Now, basically, China, as I said, hopes that they continue working with the United States, as has been the case in the last several years. I mean, if Kamala Harris had been elected, it would have been pretty much business as usual. But with Trump, they just don't know, but they're ready. One final point here is that if they're ready to go their own way, if Trump's tariffs are too high, if there are too many adverse actions from their perspective by Trump against China.
Trade wars are an entirely different beast. While there is one possibly brewing between the US and China, another lies on the horizon, and it involves the European Union.
For the first time since the Cold War, we must genuinely fear for our self-preservation. And the reason for a unified response had never been so compelling.
川普真的会对中国寄出60%甚至更高的关税吗？亚洲时报这篇分析报道提供了一个比较不那么悲观的观点。报道当中提到，在面对美中问题时，中国并没有把矛头指向川普，并释放出希望降低地缘政治温度的讯号，让部分政策分析师思考并提出川普的关税说是否只是更大的美国战略的一部分的看法。
To me, the most beautiful word in the dictionary is tariff.
Trump is focused on raising tariffs to prevent China from shipping many of their goods into the United States that perhaps are subsidized by the government.
And his campaign for re-election left no doubt that his ambition for American supremacy was still his North Star.
We will hire American, buy American, build American, grow American, and show the whole world that the American dream is back.
China-US relations are heading into uncertain times as Donald Trump prepares to return to the White House. The two global superpowers have had rocky relations in recent years, and they look set to get worse. During his first term, President Trump started a trade war with China, imposing high tariffs on many Chinese goods. And Beijing retaliated, placing its own tariffs against the US.
His current plan? Boost U.S. manufacturing by imposing a 60% tariff on Chinese goods. Economists say Wall Street is giving Trump a honeymoon, with stocks initially surging despite the risk of price hikes and inflation that a trade war over tariffs could bring.
After an initial bout of euphoria after President-elect Trump won the election, Wall Street spent the last week fretting about whether he'll really try to follow through with the less market-friendly aspects of the agenda. You know what comes to mind there? Major import tariffs. There's been a lot of speculation if he'll really be able to follow through, or maybe this is just a negotiating tactic with our trading partners. Call it the art of the deal. Or how much damage these plans could do to the global economy and the stock market.
China unveiled a new plan today. Their Commerce Ministry put out a document. It's a 9-point plan. It includes things like financing support to companies involved in international trade, expanding the coverage of export credit insurance, and trying to boost e-commerce sales overseas. Beijing has also issued orders to its border provinces. Provincial and local governments have been told to monitor trade and provide all the support they can. All of this is part of today's plan. But it's not the only thing that China has been working on. You may have noticed that Beijing seems to be friendlier these days. It is reaching out to both rivals and competitors. China is trying to improve other ties as well. President Xi Jinping was in Brazil this week for the G20 summit. He met leaders from across the world there, and he struck a conciliatory tone. Look at Europe. Chinese state media says that Xi was being quite friendly. He said China and the EU could resolve their differences via dialogue. This is a far cry from what happened just a few months back. The EU was planning its own set of tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, so China promptly hit back with tariffs on European brandy. A trade war was on the verge of breaking out there, but now Xi Jinping is talking about resolving differences. Why the change in tone? Because China does not want a multi-front trade war. The Trump tariffs seem inevitable. There's probably no escaping them. So Beijing wants to keep other markets open.
川普自诩是精通交易艺术的谈判大师，他认为关税是谈判的筹码。他虽然对中国寄出惩罚性关税，但这是为美国的利益着想。川普是不是对中国存在全面的敌意，我们无法得知。但是从他这次挑选的内阁成员来看，多功能具有很大的意义。纽约时报近期发表一篇文章，当中就提到，川普谈到中国时更注重交易而不是意识形态。所以可以看出，川普在军事外交上对中国严厉，但是在看待赚钱事业时，他又是从另一个角度去思考。就像多数人认为马斯克的存在会为他的团队埋下争执的导火线，因为马斯克的赚钱事业跟中国有着很广泛的挂钩。但是如果从全球有购买电动车、太阳能板的市场需求来看，中国能做，美国自然也能做。那如果是赚钱的事业，没有道理美国要让给中国去赚钱。所以从这个角度来看，马斯克的事业会为美国提供多大的就业市场，滚动出多少的就业需求，为美中关系搭建多大的合作空间，美国又可以利用中国为自己在建立完整的产业链上提供多少的服务，或许就是未来美中大交易可能出现的议题。